Hi, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick introduction and walkthrough of the app builder. I'm currently in the Inhouz console. I'm going to go into the app builder tab. Here I can see all the web applications that I have access to. If you notice, we have two types of applications: web apps and web components. Web applications are your traditional type of application. You can put a link in the URL and they will show up. Whereas web components are basically apps within applications, right? These are reusable blocks of UI logic, right? So this is supposed to make your life easier, because if you had a piece of a component that you would like to use in different places, perhaps in different ways, but minor deviations, you don't need to rebuild everything every single time. All right. There are a bunch of things on this page, and we will get to them in future videos. For now, I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of what the app builder looks like. We're going to go into our current website, and it's going to be, well, brilliantly named Inhouz website. So this is our current website at the time of this video. By the time you're watching this video, we probably have moved to a different website. All right, so I'm going to click to view, and the app builder loads, and our application now is loading. So really quickly, we're going to go from left to right, and I'm going to try and do this as fast as possible. All right, as you can see, the application loads and it looks like the real application. Despite the fact that on this application, or on this platform rather, applications are data and event driven, but we still render and try to simulate the exact or live application state as close as possible. All right, so this website, as you can see, is all based on individual components that were dragged and dropped and then configured. All right, so we're going to go from left to right as fast as we can. Here we have pages, or we call the page manager. We can add a new page. We could dive into a page. So within the page, what do you expect, right? You expect to have your SEO configuration. This configuration could be dynamic or static. This means that you can use your data, or you can use custom data, custom logic to basically configure your SEO. And you can configure your routes. So this is traditional route configuration with route parameters. You can configure security solutions. So basically, I can make this page a viewable only to somebody who is logged in. That's what this means. All right. And then you have your lifecycle functions, page load, page close. For people who are, familiar with traditional software developments, you're probably familiar with this. All right. And we're going to go into the elements. Here we have two tabs, elements and saved elements. The elements tab is basically a well-organized library of drag and drop elements that you can use to build any kind of web application solution. As you can see, this application is made up of individual blocks of elements that have been put together and beautifully positioned and orchestrated using the style CSS configurator on our right. So let's go to the next tab, which here is our element hierarchy. So within the application, you could always click on an element and dive into the element. You can basically, so everything is clickable. You can dive into every single element by just simply clicking on it. But there are some elements that might be hard to find. Maybe they are hidden because of some logic that makes it hidden based on some app states. If you wanted to find an element, this would be the easiest way to find a hard to reach element. All right. Then we go to the functions. So if you see this and you recognize it, well, it is exactly what you think it is. Lifecycle functions. Pre-render data, so this runs when your app loads. This is basically because our applications are server-side rendered. you can load the application with custom data. Now, depending on the size of your data, depending on how slow your data source is, this could obviously affect performance, and it could obviously affect load time. So only use when you're sure that it works for you. On upload, functions in this step or in this lifecycle event will run when the application loads. On app close, runs when the application's closed. On app data change, these functions are listening for changes on specific fields. And as you can see in this case, this is a nested field. And based on this field changing, these functions will trigger accordingly. On route to change, basically triggers functions based on route to change events. All right. So here we have the function builder neatly tucked into the app builder. This is for your convenience. You're building your application. You might want to use a function, but you don't know what it's called. You could always come in here, find it, search for it, and then select it. Or you're trying to write some new logic. You can always come in here, create a new function, deploy it, and then use it in your app immediately. It's really, really a cool thing. Here we have the app data. So we have two tabs here, the initial app data. This is where you're going to configure your initial app states. In this application, we use a bunch of static data, but in your application, it could be dynamic data. And you could just have some placeholders. For example, we have some placeholders here, and this is populated with some logic. So we have over here what we call live app data. So while you build in the app builder, you have the real app experience. You're building the way you expect the user. You're building and interacting with your application the same way you would expect the user to interact with it in the deployed environment. Meaning that you get to come over here and you get to see the way the data is working. You can debug things in real time. So this is a really, really cool feature. And one more thing, if we go all the way to the bottom, you can see your app settings. If you had a logged in user, you would be able to see that user here, and you'd be able to interact with said user. You have your routes configurations, and all the things that you would see in the live app, you could basically work with here. Then here we have our style guide, and on this other tab we have our saved styles. So the style guide is basically local to an application. Here, if you were trying to create a language, a UI language for your application, maybe you were going to make all the inputs look a certain way. There's no need to drag and drop every single input element and then update this style using the CSS configurator. All you need to do here is just specify that you want all inputs to have a certain design pattern, and then every time you drag and drop, it would inherit whatever is in the style guide. We're going to jump into all these concepts in different little chunks of videos. This is just going to be a quick overview. Then here we have our modal manager. This is basically where you configure your modals. You can basically add new modals, open them up. So modals, like everything else, are also just drag and drop elements in a modal view. Let's get out of here. So over here we have what we call sample users. So in the app builder, if you wanted to simulate a logged in user, you could basically create sample users. And these users, you can give them different plans and different configurations, depending on if you were trying to do certain things in your live application. A valid use case might be that you could have one application that has two plans with two different levels of access. And you get to build two sample users with those levels of access, and then build your app so that you can basically simulate the exact scenario that is going to play out in the deployed version. Here you have launch approval. So we do have approval workflows. You can think of this similar to what you would think of a GitHub pull request. If you wanted maybe an environment to require approval before deployment, whenever it is deployed, whoever the approvers are will receive notification messages, and then you can come in here, leave a message, approve or reject. So we're going to dive into this in a separate video. Here we have the merge deployments. So we have all our different environments and our deployed versions in those environments. Currently, we have version 1650 deployed in all 3 environments. Now, this is not always going to be the case. Sometimes you might have a version that is behind, a version that is, an environment that is behind or ahead. And you could simply merge environments to each other. Very convenient. So you can think of this as a simple way of maybe even rolling back versions of your application. All right. So here we have the application settings. So this is where you would configure all the other settings of your application. The fav icon, the app logos, the subdomain of your application. If you wanted to configure a custom domain, as you can see, we've done that here. You can basically configure a custom domain. It's very simple. If you wanted to restrict application access, right? This is an unrestricted application because this is, our public-facing website. If you wanted to have some access control internally for the application that you're working on, you could basically configure that here. If you wanted to grant external users, so third-party users, access to your application, you can do that here as well. Here you can see that we've basically configured launch approval for the production environments, and and on and on and on. So we have quite a few configurations here. All right. So moving over to the middle, we have the ability to switch between applications, your application variations. This right here is not completely built out. In the future, you're going to be able to A/B test your applications, and that is coming soon, but not yet. You can switch between pages. You can go into a preview mode. Applications here are built in a responsive way. If you wanted to switch between the views, and if you wanted to build a responsive application, it's super simple. You can just use our responsive, modes, and it will take you between the different views, and you can configure your styling accordingly. Okay, so over here we have the versions. So here you can see all the versions of your application. You can switch between versions. Here you can basically just launch an application to any environment of your choice. You can also schedule a launch. Now on the right, as you can see, I'm racing, but bear with me. Here you can see the CSS configurator. One thing you're going to notice is that we have just about every single CSS styling that you would need for an application. And if you don't see anything that you need here, you could always use the function builder to add set styles yourself. One thing to note is that on here, every single styling or every single style element can be dynamic, meaning that, on this platform, your styling is dynamic. So you can think of, an element that you can display or you can hide based on some logic. It's a beautiful thing. Here we have the attributes. So this is the configurations for an element. The last thing we clicked on was the link block. And as you can see here, it has a navigation type. You can navigate to a page. You can navigate to a URL using the a browser refresh. You have the page path, the title, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And of course, you have your events. So this is an event-driven application. Also, this is a data-driven application. All right, so here we have interactions. You can basically configure very cool interactions on the platform in a very, very easy way. And we're going to cover that in a separate video. But without going on for any longer than I have currently gone on for, that's a quick walkthrough of the Inhouz app builder, the most powerful app builder in the market right now. All right, catch you in the next video.